Welcome, 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 welcome.
Welcome, 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 welcome,
Welcome, welcome to the Rum. Hey, everybody, welcome to
welcome to the
Rum. To the Rum. I don't know, it's not a joke. This is literally the podcast.
It is the podcast. We'll drop that theme music right in there.
Oh, hey, everybody. We have a repeat guest, the one and only Mr. Cocktail Wonk, Matt Pietrek. And we needed to hit the record button because Constantine is going to tell you, Matt, about a very fluky scenario that I've never even heard of. I didn't even know this was possible. So, Constantine, take it away. And Matt, we would love your insight and knowledge to see if you've ever heard of anything like this.
So I've got an injury, a rum-related injury. I've had tons of injuries over the years. This is my first. Okay, it's not my first rum-related injury. I'm sure there's others in there, but where the rum itself tried to harm me. I was right over here in the studio, and I had a bottle of Hampton Great House 2020. We were wiping bottles to put on the new shelves that, Matt, you commented on when we were just chatting a minute ago. So I was relocating the rum onto the shelves, and we're just wiping dust off the bottles. And just picking up the bottle, I freak out because of what happened. So I'm holding a bottle about like this. Mm-hmm. And I had just by the neck, so you can't, viewers, listeners at home, I've got about 2-3 fingers on the neck, on the shoulder of the bottle, and I had a damp rag, all the same temperature. The bottle had actually been opened and then closed, so there was no pressure inside. And I touched it with that damp rag, and it blew the neck off, clean off around the neck with a little tongue of glass going down to right to where I touched it with the bottle, sliced through my finger. Severed the nerve in the artery and turned into a trip to the hospital, which turned into surgery. And I've got this either W or M-shaped scar on my finger where they had to put everything back together. But why and how, all I can think of is there must have been some tension built up in the glass from production. And I touched it just the right spot, and it sounded like a champagne cork, and it blew the neck over right next to my wife's head, down the stairs. Just bizarre, blood everywhere. It was terrible.
I think it didn't shatter. Ghost of Nelson. It's got to be.
I tell you,
it must have been right. So that was my. Yeah,
I'm still trying to figure out how because you had opened the bottle, right, Constantine? So it wasn't a sealed bottle. So I don't know how it got so pressurized that it exploded. Like it didn't even explode. Like only part of it shot off.
And it sounded like a champagne cork, like that big popping sound, like a big pop gun.
Yeah, I don't know, Matt. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
I mean, I've certainly heard of stress in materials. I mean, I was a physics major, but never in a rum bottle like this.
Well, I got it.
Yeah,
my luck. Well, I got the one.
And unfortunately, Constantine's harpsichord playing days are over. So for those of you who never got to hear Constantine play harpsichord, wow. What a great loss for this.
But there is one more question here, though. The most important question is, how much rum did you lose?
So I saved, the bottle was probably, this is not the same bottle, but probably about 2/3 full, and I saved about 1/3 that was in the bottle as it lay on the floor. And I managed
to get down and lick it up.
I know. Great.
The funny thing is, when we came back from the hospital hours later, the house smelled amazing. And you can still see the mark in the floor where it like ate the varnish, started eating into the varnish on the floor.
Well done.
Yeah. See, now I'm even afraid to touch my great house that's right here, the 2020. It's crazy. Well, everybody, thank you as always for tuning in. We have brought Matt. Yeah, I think Matt, you're our first repeat. Oh no, actually we had Andrew Cabot come back. But Matt, we are here to talk about Navy Rum. So the first time we just talked about your research and everything like that. But today we have an update to the second edition of your book on Navy Rum. But I think it could be fun for us to talk through just the history of Navy Rum and go everywhere else in between. So before we get too deep into it, Matt, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I don't know why you've subjugated yourself to dealing with our nonsense and tomfoolery again, Matt, but hey, here we are.
Anything to sell a book.
I think that the fun thing about where I'll preface with this is of all the misconceptions, Matt, you and I've talked about this quite a bit. The rum and pirates, I don't know why that one eats at me. When somebody does a really bad Jack Sparrow or ours at me, I cringe. And then I get a chance to go in an Ace Ventura style. Well, okay, but the first thing is that actually is bullshit because pirates drink whatever they could get their hands on. But if you want to talk about the actual history of rum consumption and purchasing rum, it was the British Royal Navy for 300 years. And then I go into it again and again and again. But I think, Matt, it would be cool wherever kind of you want to start. I think it'd be fun to maybe just have you talk through all the research that you've done, the origins of rum, because obviously there's a lot of great resources out there, your book included, but you are on the front lines of actually going Admiralty records, meeting with insiders, people who even have blended. So let's start at the very beginning. The British Empire is colonizing the world. They have the Caribbean. They're starting to distill. And they're starting to also, at this time, have their Navy go around the world. So they need some kind of consumed product. So I will pause and let you go, and away we go.
So when Britain ruled the waves, so it was not just Britain, actually. It was Britain, Spain, Portugal, France. They were all sort of, the thing about the Caribbean, and actually Caribbean, but also Southeast Asia, was that these were like, ooh, we've made our boats good enough that now we can sail long distances and colonize lands that make things that we can't get at home. We can't grow sugar, cane sugar at least. We can't grow that in the UK or in Paris or wherever. So, there was a financial benefit to like sending out their ships and colonizing these lands and essentially turn them into agricultural factories. So, the Brits got particularly good at it. My understanding, I'm not a boat historian, but things like the bottoms of their boats, I think they would like line them with copper, so they were not quite. They would go faster. They would acquire barnacles, something like that. The point is the British are sort of late to the Caribbean, but sort of caught up quickly, and they, it was all about again getting things, primarily sugar early on, and rum sort of came along as a side effect of that. It's funny when you think about how much we value rum, but at the time, back, if you look at the colonial records and, the state overseers, they're talking about, the sugar makes the profit, and whatever money we can get for selling rum, that helps, offset some of the expenses. So rum was always sort of second fiddle to sugar until fairly recently. But the sugar economics dominated everything, and so much of the history. I mean, it's one of the things I never thought I would read so much about sugar estates or sugar mills or things like that. But essentially, unlike other spirits where like, we grew this grain to make a whiskey. With rum, Caribbean rum was like, we grew the sugar cane to make sugar, and some rum also came out of it. And so in order to find the tidbits to how much was made or what was going on or how they were distilling it, anything like that, you really have to go dig through all the sugar records to find anything, most things. It was nobody was, at least not until really until like the 1900s, nobody was writing like books or papers focusing on rum. It was always like, there would be like, here's a book on sugar in the French Caribbean, and first 14 chapters on sugar and agriculture and manure and all this kind of stuff. And look, there's a chapter at the end about rum. And so it's figuring out this stuff is sort of like doing a puzzle where every once in a while a new document comes along and you're like, here's 3 new pieces. But still, you don't know what the puzzle looks like. You have to figure out like what the pieces tell you and how do you put them in the broader context of this puzzle. So you're constantly, I don't know what the story is, but I'm trying to fit each little thing into this story. And so that's, it started out as a 4-month project that has basically, been always in my brain for the last 6 years.
I mean, so it sounds like, you went down a crazy rabbit hole. Really quick, before I forget, Constantine, I committed a cardinal sin. We didn't talk about show and tell and what we're drinking. So
I see your copper cup over there.
Yes, I've got a copper cup. Matt, are you imbibing this evening? Or
I am imbibing, but it's actually it's a cocktail. My friend, I went to an event and my friend was bartending at, and it's called the kind of a Monkey Man, because the Monkey Man was an actual cocktail, like in an imbibe or something like that. And I'm like, and I didn't get the recipe, but I'm like, I can pick this up at home, and it's actually really good. It's basically and this in the original Monkey Man originally, it's like half whiskey, half rum, and so I actually used some Costco bourbon, but also Costco bourbon. And then also I have some Brazilian rum from Apri. So it's not cachaça, it's Apri, so Brazilian rum with, sort of, more aging forward vanilla or whatever. That combined with pineapple juice, lime juice, cinnamon syrup, and banana liqueur. And pineapple juice, and it's delicious.
That sounds lovely.
So yeah, every time I'm like, I have fresh. I literally squeezed pineapple yesterday, and I have fresh pineapple juice and everything there, and I'm like, make it. So,
you fancy.
Yeah.
You fancy.
Cool. I mean, I'm surrounded by, I could reach, 100 rums within 3 seconds, but that's what I'm drinking right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, like
just
it.
like you turn around, like, there you go. What do I want? So.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I joke it's kind of like Netflix when I'm sure the same thing with you guys when you're looking at all the bottles and you're like, I mean, I guess I'll just reach for this one again, the one that I've been having nonstop.
Yeah. Well, I'm of the age. I'm not that old. I'm of the age. You're like, I could devote the rest of my life to trying to drink these without becoming an alcoholic, and I would fail. I would never finish them all.
That's why, I mean, I bring bottles to every time I'm behind the bar at Lucky Tiki. I'm like, please help me drink these. I can't. I'm going to be dead in the ground before all of these bottles are empty.
Yeah. And I want them to be drunk. I don't want somebody to come along and pour them out. What is this? Did it go bad?
I know. No, it doesn't go bad. Constantine, what are you drinking? I'll go last.
I got Black Tot 2021 edition.
Oh, there you go.
Quite tasty. Yes, since we're on the topic of Navy rum.
Oh yeah, I was on theme as well because I got the 50th anniversary, which I got the last bottle from a liquor store in the UK. So now I'm at a point in my buying journey where I've slowed down for sure, and if I am, it's usually bottles that I cannot get in the United States. So I'm having to find things. Like I've gotten a couple things from Excellence Rum, but the shipping starts at €72, and that just hurts my soul so much. It's almost cheaper.
Buy more than one. We have the same opposite problem in reverse. We're selling books to Europe. I'm like, don't buy one. Get your friends to buy 2, 3, 4. It gets much cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Internet, and that's sort of like, and like in Europe has all the good stuff. I mean, we have some good things here, but like you go to Europe. In fact, one of our common friends was walked into Paris rum shop today, like, oh my God.
Oh yeah. I know I need to get out there because I want to go to Rum Attitude and then Excellence as well. I mean, the other place I want to go is Italy. There's this retailer called Spirits Academy, and they have everything I want. They have like all of the El Dorado rare cask series, and they don't ship to the US. Or there's a cask strength option of Havana Club from Cuba on the whiskey exchange, but they won't ship it to the United States. So
I can't. Yeah,
I have that.
Wow, Matt, thank you. You're so cool.
I'm just saying. When I go to Europe, it's the same thing. When I go to Europe, I'm like, what can I not get? And it's not what all the fanboys are going for. It's like, what? No, this is going to be interesting, and nobody knows.
Exactly.
Or do you have a boat and you're doing runs down to Cuba there, man?
Oh my God, wouldn't that honestly, if I win the lottery, I'll tell you, the first thing I would do is I would personally invite maybe like 50 people. I would charter a giant boat of like 100 cabins or whatever. And I would just say, we're going to sail around the Caribbean. We're going to sail around. We're going to go for 6 months a year, whatever. Because the thing is, like, I haven't been to nearly enough Caribbean islands. I've only been to Puerto Rico, technically, and then Guyana, which is not an island, right?
Nobody remembers that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I haven't been anywhere else. So I think it'd be great to be like, okay, we're going to go to Barbados for a week. We're going to go to Jamaica for 2 weeks. We're going to go to St. Lucia for a week. We're going to go to Martinique for 5 weeks or whatever it is. And then we could do the old Ed Hamilton treatment of just, I've been to every distillery twice. You're like, that's, I'm so envious. Maybe someday if I could do that. But anyways, if I win the lottery, you two are invited and we're going to go do the things.
Let's do
it. But in the meantime, Matt, I understand in tradition with the toast, I know we're not ringing the 4 bells and the purser.
4 bells to the forenoon watch. Yes.
Yes, exactly. But I figure we can cheers and then we'll get back to the topic at hand. So Matt, since you taught us all of this.
Okay. Yes. So Oh God, it's been a moment since I've done this one. When we think of Navy rum, think up spirits. You've probably seen up spirits, but up spirits is the call. There is a response. So gentlemen on the boat would say up spirits, and there was response from the people who would get the rum, and that response was stand fast, the Holy Ghost. And there's a whole sort of etymology about what that means, where it came from. We're not going to get into that here, but I'm going to say up spirits, and you're going to resoundingly answer with stand fast, the Holy Ghost. So, 1, 2, 3, up spirits,
stand fast, the Holy Ghost.
The Holy Ghost.
Yes.
Huzzah.
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 So back to, I mean, if we want to go chronologically, Matt, we can go all over the place. I know we're all ADD. I know in the beginning, so England, all the European powers are doing the things. I also think it's funny that England, I think, tried to conquer Cuba or something with Henry Morgan and then didn't. So they said, oh, we'll just take over this island called Jamaica.
Right.
And that was a wise decision for them because we were enjoying some Jamaica rum. But so, British are sailing around. Obviously, we have the rum ration and morale, press gangs, all of that. But how did it really start? Because I know rum is a commodity. It's sailing around. And was it kind of a gradual thing that sailors just started tapping into the barrels? And how did it turn into a daily rum ration?
Good question. So many articles talk about, the Royal Navy sailors every day since 1655. And no, it didn't work quite like that. And in fact, if you think about it, this is, this is in the book. I talk about how, when you go to sea, and you're like, okay, you're in England, you're going to send out your boats to go to the Caribbean. It's like, well, you don't just send the sailors off. Like, you need to provision that boat. You need stuff. You need clothes and tools and all that stuff. And oh yes, you need food and things to drink. So I'm like, okay, well, clearly they can drink water, right? Except think about it for a moment. This was 1600s. We don't have steel containers. We can't just make a fire on board to boil all of our water, and so your containers were wooden cask. That was a de facto wooden cask. And so, or that was the de facto container. And so they put water in barrels, and within 2 weeks it would start going bad. So you're like, okay, well, maybe we know booze sort of helps a little bit. So let's send out some beer with them. And load a couple casks of beer in there, and beer lasts longer. Maybe it'll last 3 or 4 weeks. Again, there's no refrigeration here. So the beer, okay, well, wine, we have wine. Send the wine off. And again, it would eventually go bad. But what would not go bad was high strength alcohol. And if you think about it, you're in England, you're in the UK, London, you're provisioning a Navy ship to go out, and you want a high strength spirit. And well, whiskey hasn't really taken off yet. Whiskey sort of came a little bit later. I mean, yes, there was some whiskey, but it was not, the UK or Scotch whiskey industry that we know today. And so what was the de facto higher strength spirit that everybody was drinking? Well, just across the channel from the UK is France. And so the brandy was sort of the de facto distilled spirit that, not only in France, but also in the UK, they were making a lot of brandy. Shipping into England is before Napoleon, and the Brits got into it. But essentially, they would send the ships out with brandy was their high strength spirit that went out there. And then also as well, if you were, sort of orthogonal to that or in parallel to that, two different things. If you were a merchant or not a merchant, if you were an estate owner in the Caribbean, you have your sugar estate, you're overseeing it, you're not going to drink sort of the crap rum that was being made. It was not, we had really solidified how rum was made properly. You were having stuff brought to you. You were having good European wines and brandy brought to you. So, the 1600s British, sailing was sort of driven by brandy. And in fact, one of the letters I reference in the book is from 1687. It's essentially a reply to a request to the Secretary of the Navy, basically gave early. Normally, when our ships pull into port, in other ports, around the world, they expect to be provisioned with brandy before they go back out. But they're in Jamaica, and they're kind of making Jamaican rum there now. Rum, is it okay if we like instead of giving them brandy, give rum, and and he agreed to it. But that was 1687, so like well past 1655, and in fact, it remained that way. The Royal Navy did not actually sort of say rum is the thing. Like we're not messing around with wine or brandy or anything like that. Rum is the thing. That did not really come around until 1808 or so.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, before that, it wasn't so much about rum. Sailors need rum. It was like sailors need alcohol. And so we have records from 1731 that talk about basically if you're, this is essentially the guidelines to the Navy. When you send out sailors on the boat, this is what they get every day. Like this is part of their pay. In addition to their monetary pay, this is part of the pay. They will get like a pound of meat and a loaf of bread or whatever the quantities were. It was prodigious amounts when you read it, prodigious amounts. But the de facto was a gallon of beer. And then there was a sort of regulation. Or basically, at some point, they're like, these places we're going, not a whole lot of beer making here. So when we go to reprovision, we're gonna have to find something out. And so in 1731, it was like, in circumstances where beer is not available, you can substitute like a quart of wine or like a half pint of a rock or rum or something else in there. Basically, it was like rum was it's one of those if you find yourself somewhere and the only thing you can get is rum, it's okay to use. And that was 1731. That's the earliest record we have of that, sort of formal naval record we have of that. But it's kind of, I like to talk about it. 1731 is like, yay, verily, sailors would get half a pint of rum or something else, but half a pint of rum. And it was only 9 years later until Edward Vernon's like, we have a bunch of drunk ass sailors here, and it's hazardous to their health and their morals and all these sorts of things. It's this beautiful piece of writing. You're like, man, get to the point, but also this is beautiful writing. And essentially like, yeah, we're gonna like make you dilute this stuff 4-1. So you got to you get in U.S. units like 10 ounces of high strength rum every day, but we're going to dilute it with 40 ounces of water. So you're getting like a strong wine out of it. You're going to slow you down a bit. And then that little passage goes on. The best part of the little passage goes on. This is 1740. It goes on. It goes something along the lines of like, they that are good husbands of their finances may choose to purchase limes and sugar to augment the taste of this rum. And like, fucking Brits created the daiquiri, didn't they? There was no ice, there was no double straining, but nonetheless,
but it was there.
They had the rum, lime, and sugar down. And it kind of makes sense. Punch was already a thing. I think it came over from India, so the idea of like sweet sour spirit was not a new concept, but it's the earliest I've seen of like rum, lime, sugar. In official records.
But you know that there was those old salty sailors. Back in our day, we didn't get it. I don't know why they said they were like from the deep south. Oh, I say back in our day, they'd have to be like really thick Cockney. We didn't need water. We just try and get straight out the barrel. All right. So that was my like Jason Statham has a cold voice. So
the Southern accent, this is a complete aside. The Southern accent in the U.S. they say it sounds more like what English used to sound like. Oh, really? That's why it's sort of preserved that way. The accent would have been closer to that than say what like the Cockney or whatever you did there. I think
whatever the hell he's doing,
whatever the hell I'm doing. I don't know. It's an out of body experience. No, it's funny because there's on the outer banks of I think somewhere in the Carolinas there is a specific American dialect that is very much like the time of Robinson Crusoe, that very kind of language of English. Also,
North Carolina somewhere,
Yeah, quick aside, there's a fascinating video about how far we could all go back in time and understand English as it is. And it's right about 1706 with, I, Robinson Crusoe, poor soul, stranded on this island. But if you go back before that, then it's Shakespearean English. There's a great vowel change where T used to be pronounced tay. And then you get into Middle English with Chaucer, and that's like, what is going on? And then you get to Old English, and it sounds more Norse than anything. And anyway, so I digress. But
I mean, don't get me started on medial S's.
No,
I'm now at the point where I can like read it and not notice it.
That's amazing.
This is where all of your thing where your F's would occur. You see S's instead, or S's and F's, one of those two. But basically, like you're like, what is this? And I realize, when it doesn't make sense, make it the other thing. Like I see an S, like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, it's an F. And so now I can generally read it and not think about it. So, but yeah, that's all these. Basically, that sort of went out of style right around 1800 or so. Okay, switched to normal stuff.
Well, and even Matt, like in your research, I'd imagine that you probably had to look at it through almost kind of a translation lens, because I'm sure there were words that perhaps we don't use anymore. Or I like how everything started, yea, verily, and my mind went to, thou shalt not go over that hill. Thou shalt surely die, says the Lord. I don't know. I keep turning British, but like
or every letter signed off with your obedient servant.
Yes,
it's kind of weird.
It's very weird. Yeah. Very weird. But now, so I had no idea. I mean, I knew that the rum ration was a thing, but I didn't realize that it really didn't get pronounced until the early 1800s, which I guess makes sense because you had Lehman Hart and you had a couple other blending houses that really started. So what was like the tipping point, I guess, Matt, because it's early 1800s. I know Lehman Hart on all the bottles say 1804. What was the transition into all the things?
You can't see it. I'm rolling my eyes a little bit.
Oh no! Wait, why? Is the label alive?
No, he was alive. It was sort of like, there's a guy actually wrote a whole book about Lemon Heart, and no, it was well before. I mean, maybe 1804, but it was certainly not London, certainly not supplying the Royal Navy in 1804. Okay. No, but the thing about it is that it was always a spirit ration at some point, or at least the early 1700s. It was always there's some sort of alcoholic ration. Sure. Keep the sailors from deserting, part of their pay. But at the time, if you were in 1600s, 1700s, it was sort of every ship for themselves. Like captains, got to keep the sailors provided with what they need, their food, their booze, their water, whatever. And so, we pulled into port and you're like, what can we get? We can buy this. This will do. And so it wasn't really until around 1800, a little after 1800, that we see sort of a transition from the Royal Navy saying, hey, ships, when you show up here to this place, this guy's who will supply you. And around 1800, we say we're going to do this ourselves. We are going to start buying rum from London merchants and blending it ourselves. And that date is not happenstance, in my opinion. It also so happened that the West India docks were built, basically started operation in 1800, 1801. Okay. And this book that we haven't talked about yet, but this book, a lot of the book talks about the West India docks, so sort of the consumer side of rum. Interesting. And the idea, the very core idea of the West India docks was that Britain was so successful at the colonies, sending out so many ships and bringing them back. This is the triangle trade, bringing back ships from the Caribbean laden with sugar and tea and molasses and rum and all these sort of things. Is that at some point they overloaded the Thames, and so many other ports, but essentially overloaded. Like crap. Now we have more boats sitting in the middle of the Thames waiting to be unloaded than there are government officials who can clear it and collect the taxes, whatever. And a boat sitting in the Thames is a boat that's being robbed by river pirates. Those were an actual thing, essentially river pirates. Oh, wow. That the boat's sitting there, there are paintings of these clipper ships, lined up 4 wide, just sitting in the Thames, waiting for weeks or months to unload. And it was just assumed that you would lose about 20% of the cargo. After arriving in London, you'd lose 20% more of your cargo to pirates. There's actually there's a whole great book about the 12 types of river pirates and whatever, where the term mudlark comes from, one of them. Mm-hmm. But essentially the British merchants, who owned these ships and owned the not the brands, owned the trading houses in Rum. They're like, how do we fix this? Like, well, let's build a faster and more secure way to offload these ships. And so what they did was basically took on the largest construction project, possibly the largest in the modern world, largest construction project the world ever seen, which was to cut 3 separate canals across this big turn-in river. It's called the Isle of Dogs. If you look on the map, you see Isle of Dogs. Now you would call it Canary Wharf. If you look on the modern map, you see Canary Wharf. But essentially, they cut 3 channels across the Isle of Dogs, in deep water channel or deep enough water channels to where they could basically encase the entire thing in 30-foot high walls. Ships would arrive and they would enter into the docks, sort of like door locked behind them, and then they would quickly pull up to a series of warehouses. The stretch of warehouses was like 3/4 of a mile long. I mean, they're massive. There's still a few there today. If you go to the west, to the London Docklands, you see them. You're seeing about 10% of what was once there, and it's a lot. Wow. But essentially, the idea was like the ships could come in and offload very quickly. They were skilled. The sailors who brought the ship in didn't stay on. The sailors went off to go to Liberty or whatever. The dock workers brought it in, unloaded it very quickly, and then turned it around very quickly and had another set of warehouses there ready of stuff to go out. So it was basically like rapid change. Come in, offload into bonded warehouses, turn around, reload, go back out in the Thames, like 3-4 day turnaround. Now, this might be, seem like an interesting, side note, but these warehouses, there was a section of these warehouses dedicated to the rum storage. And these warehouses at their peak had 40,000 puncheons, puncheon being 110 British gallons, 140 American gallons, 40,000 puncheons of high strength, cast strength rum sitting in bond there. The biggest rum warehouse the world had ever seen. Like, wow. And if you would have taken all of the rum that was in it's called Rum Key. It's Quay. You want to say Quay or Quay? Rum Key, Holmes Key.
I was gonna say Holmes Key.
Yeah. But yeah, Rum Key. But Rum Key was huge rum warehouse that was in bond. They had specialized workers who worked there to dock the cooperage, would inspect everything every day. And the thing about it was that when the rum came off the ships, they basically go into this bonded warehouse. The merchants who owned these casks didn't know any taxes then. They just paid. They would pay the warehouse workers to maintain it while this cask sat and aged 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. Hey, guess what? London Dock rum. This is what it was. It was cask that went into the West India docks from Key, and where it could age continentally for however long the merchant wants before they decide, okay, it's ready to go, pay the taxes, take it out. Now you've got London Dock rum. But
was there a concept there of maturation, or was it just sort of?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was aging. It was this was yeah. This was
or?
Yeah, this was. I mean, when we talk about these old, like the lemon heart rums of the 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever. These were London Dock rums. They were aged there. They were continentally aged before we had the term. Sure. And so it was. This is where the aging took place. Most of the rum there would have been Jamaica rum, Demerara rum. Those were like the twin workhorses of the British Empire. But it was like, and there are pictures of it in the book. They're precious few. One of the problems getting pictures of it was that this is all very flammable, and so no flames, no candles, no anything.
Yeah.
And some of the large number of these casks were actually underground. Like, they would excavate the ground, had massive basements filled with these casks sitting there aging in the dark, but they still needed to be checked. If something went wrong, they had to fix it. And how the hell do you see down there? Can't take a flash. There's no flashlights. In 1840, you can't let light. What
did
do
they
you do?
Send some blind people down there, or what?
More clever. They actually it's a side note to the bigger picture, to this bigger story, but they built a system where there were like lenses up on the roof, and there was like a lens on, like the solar tube you sometimes see in house.
Yeah.
That idea, like a lens on the roof, several lenses on the roof that would bring the light in, and then like a mirrored tube that would stretch all the way down to the basement, and then lenses at the bottom of this tube that would sort of reflect the light out, basically light it somewhat. But then if a Cooper really needed to see one of the punch-ins, they basically had a stick with a piece of tinfoil on it that they would hold up and basically reflect the lens, reflect the light from the solar tube to where they could see the cask.
You know where my mind goes, Matt, is just total ancient Egypt, where they had the reflective mirrors. It sounds somewhat-ish similar. I'm just going to say that England, because I think Egypt was part of the empire. That's where they got their idea.
Right.
But hey, that's amazing. I was going to say, well, what they did was night vision got an early form of night vision.
Exactly that.
But that's crazy. And so, at this time, is this when, the British Royal Navy, is it in part because Napoleon beat sugar that they're gonna start really focusing on rum? And when did the Navy get involved and say all of this rum is ours? Because I don't imagine that the Rum Curious Club or equivalent existed in London at the time, and someone goes, "Oh, can we get that single barrel of the finest Fiji rum that you have?" Yeah. Like when did? I'm assuming it was all the British Navy that said this is all ours.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to pause here for a moment and shut my dog up.
Okay, no worries.
Hold on. You'll edit this out.
Well, now that Matt's going to lay down,
this right out of here.
Go. Yeah. You come back in here, I'm breaking skulls. If I have to come back in here, I'm breaking skulls. But Constantine, I finished my Black Tot 50th. I wonder if I should do maybe one more. Do you have another Navy rum? Well, right now I have Skipper Overproof, which, by the way, for our lovely listeners,
my Skipper. It's here somewhere.
The Skipper the label is the best in the history of mankind. I know they haven't changed their label in a long time, but I love the back of this. It's jolly hard to know what's what these days. At every turn, and I'm doing the RP in what I would imagine is 1930s England. Introduced to the next big thing, rubbing our eyes in astonishment at the latest trend of London to Sydney, New York to Saint-Tropez. It's surely a rum old world wherever you look. I won't do the whole thing. But I was just reading the back.
I like
of
the
Skipper
front label.
Oh my God!
The
Skipper's
top where it says there. I'm pointing as if you can see where I'm pointing.
The best in this rum world, right?
Yes, not the best rum in this world. The best in this rum world.
That was very clever. Matt, basically, I was just asking Constantine what next rum that I have, because I have a Corman Collins Navy Proof, Skipper. I've got the British or Pusser's Deptford Dock Reserve, and that was that the name of the dockyard, Deptford?
Yeah. Okay. So Deptford was the victualling yard. It had a more formal name. It was like the Queen Victoria Yard or something like that. Yeah. But Deptford was the city, and so I've actually been. When we were doing the initial research on the book, I figured out where it was, and verified, like, yep, that was one of the rum warehouses. I feel like there's more that I didn't see that got destroyed at some point. But at least,
I'm sure.
But certainly, like on the maps, it indicated like a rum store here, and I'm like, is this all? Like, is this all? And then you realize it's like, no, because it was all coming in, and then almost as fast as it was coming in, it was going into vats. Being vatted, sent out.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other topic we can get into.
Oh, no, that sounds great. And I mean, so it's coming in, the British and the Navy, clearly they have some team that is victualling. I can never
Victualling.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The C is silent.
Forget the C is in there.
The English, as much as they're like, we enunciate everything. I'm like, no, you don't. Don't come at me with aluminium when you can't pronounce the C in victualling, or I mean, whatever.
Where do you think
the R on how many words, right?
Yeah. Where do you think victuals come? Like, some victuals. Like, that's the idea there.
I tell you, man. Okay.
So So the Navy. I think it's because my guess is because the Navy finally, like, okay, they have West India docks. Now they've got a consistent supply of rum close by, and the Navy decides, we're going to start. There you go, Deptford. We are going to start blending rums ourselves, because there may have been quality issues or unscrupulous merchants or payments lost or whatever. Like, we're going to start blending the rums, right? we're going to start blending these rums ourselves. And so there are newspaper records. Basically, like every so often, the Royal Navy would go like, okay, yea, verily, we need another 250,000 gallons of rum. We need like 100,000 gallons to go to Deptford. We need $20,000 to go to Plymouth, and 40,000 gallons to go to wherever. And I'm going to take half of that now, and half of it in a month from now. So they basically put out essentially an announcement of like, we're buying rum, and merchants, the people who are bringing it in, the people who own the casks sitting in the West India docks, they like, give us what you think you want to sell us. We're gonna evaluate it, send us samples. There was a lot of samples. Send us samples, and
tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Exactly. Send us samples and pricing, and we'll decide what we're going to buy. And so there was a steady stream of this from about 1803 through about 1870. So you can kind of see, if you were to collect them all, you can kind of get an idea of how much rum the Royal Navy was going through at any given time. Yeah, millions of gallons a year, literally millions of gallons a year. But the interesting thing about that as well was that I've been to the British National Archives. I've seen basically the purchase records for the Deptford Victualling Yard. Verily, we bought on this day like 5,000 gallons of rum from this merchant, and next day we did blah blah blah. All these like handwritten records. It's a giant book too. It's like a 3-foot tall book ledger.
Wow.
Wow.
So there's a book bigger than modern Caribbean rum.
Yeah, not much bigger, but yeah. But it was a pain in the ass to photograph too. I'm like, I just want a couple pages just so I can see, get the idea of them. Pain in the ass. But the interesting thing is 10 puncheons West Indies rum. There's no Jamaican rum, Guyana rum. There was, we fixate on their origin, and it was basically like West Indies rum. And interestingly, there was, side topic, there was a point in time around 1830 or so where they're like, we're bringing in like East Indies rum. So like stuff from like India, Calcutta, whatever.
Oh, I bet.
And apparently it was not great quality, but it was like, I think it was a matter of like, let's help these guys out here. Like, we need the sugar to keep doing well there. We need the rum from there. So helping out. But it was a brief little blip there. But
sure.
But essentially, they were not as picky about the specific origins early on as we would like to think they were back then. I mean, later, yes, but back then, not so much. And as well, the sort of, and even as late as 1806, we basically have like, how much rum did the Navy buy? And also they bought a shit ton of cognac. Or brandy, basically. Like, okay, well, what changed? Well, essentially, who owns these casks? Who wants to sell these casks to the Navy? The merchants. And the merchants basically, as a lobby, basically the West India Committee. It's still a thing, though. There is still a West India Committee today. You can go to London. I've been there twice. You can go into now it's a reading room. They have all these great historical documents. But the West India Committee was essentially, think of it as like the OPEC of its day, basically. Like, we are the merchants who own the estates, own the puncheons, and we are a powerful lobbying body. We're wealthy people. Two members of the committee, you may have heard their last names. Plummer and Wedderburn were members of
kidding
right. They were members of the committee, and so essentially they managed to get the government to say, unless you can get cognac for a lot less than rum, you're going to have to buy rum. So they basically forced the issue, used their political power to force it to be rum. And once you got started doing that, it was like, okay, let's just continue that way. It was like they never really went back to brandy or anything, to my knowledge, really after that.
Okay.
Well, Nelson was pickled in brandy famously, right?
Yes,
so
yes, exactly. That whole story.
The myth of rum.
05. That was right at that transition point. I guess, between where they
the
lobby came in.
True. That's a good point. I think it was a little tiny bit before that, but yeah, I mean, I have a copy of not the physical copy, but the PDF copy of the book Nelson's doctor wrote. Like a year afterwards. It's basically like, we wanted to preserve the body, so we want the highest strength stuff we had, and we had some brandy that was stronger than the rum. And so that's what that's what they went with. And so it was the brandy cask. So, which gets in a whole separate issue of like the gunpowder test and strength.
Oh my God, yes, Matt. I was going to say, can we please bring that up? Because for the longest time, I had read in some book or whatever. Oh yeah, they lit this on fire, and even on the back of a few rums that are out there. Mm-hmm. There's one in particular, I won't name names, but there's one in particular where it talks about they lit the rum on fire. So, and Matt was very kind because I think I'd published like a video or something like that. Matt was just, hey, just a gentle nudge that the gunpowder test is a load of bunk. And so, Matt, I would love for you to burst plenty of people's bubbles. That's the British pronunciation.
The rebuttal,
by the way. Yeah, the rebuttal. But burst people's bubbles that the gunpowder test never. I mean, it might have happened in isolation, but this whole concept of lighting gunpowder on fire with 67, 68, whatever high proof rum on a wooden ship is just silly. So dispel that for us.
Yeah. So the thing is there really was a gunpowder test. Like you could still kind of do it today, but it was essentially, if you go back to the 1500s, early 1600s, like somebody needed to know how strong a spirit was. It wasn't just rum. Like, how strong is the spirit? And who was this? The tax man. Brits. This is like, the Brits had like gotten themselves in wars around the world, and like, we need to pay for this. Okay, hey, let's tax alcohol. And so, you couldn't make it completely subjective. You can't have the excise tax collector going like, I think it's this strength. You owe this much. So they needed some sort of test to determine strength. And there were several, including like, if you soak gunpowder in the spirit, will it still spark? If you apply a flame to it, will it still spark? Will it still explode? So it was actually a test, but that test would prove or disprove that the alcohol was at least a particular strength. That's where the word proof comes from. Like if you could take gunpowder, whatever gunpowder they had, and you could soak it in a spirit, if it still was able to explode or whatever the spark or whatever the test was, then it was proof strength, at least proof strength. All I'll tell you was it's at least this strength. Now, in modern terms, we would equate that to, and actually in 1800, there was some definition of proof, and it's like the mixture of liquor, or the mixture that results from mixing 12 parts of water with 13 parts of pure alcohol at this temperature, blah, blah. There was a technical definition, but the gunpowder test was sort of like something, some idiot somewhere can do this in the field type of thing. So they didn't, it was like proof strength was not 57% ABV at the time. It was we think of it as 57% ABV. If we work through the calculations that they described, you would end up, we know the density of water and alcohol, it would be 57.14. So we can say proof strength is 57.14. And the Brits back then, it wasn't until the 1980s that they started using ABV. Now we think of it in ABV, or as Americans, we think of it as American proof, 40% ABV, 80 proof. The Brits had a very different meaning of proof. Proof was sort of like a baseline strength, and that was a reference strength, or sort of like gravity, pull of gravity, 9.8 gram or 9.8 liter or 9.8 meters per second, whatever. It was a universal constant, basically. And a rum that had a higher degree of alcohol was overproof. It was underproof. And in fact, they would essentially say, how much overproof? Well, 10% more than proof strength, not 10% ABV, but 10%, whatever proof is, 10% more of that is the strength of this, or 20% underproof. And so, as it so happens, 10% overproof is 63% ABV. Coincidence that Jamaican white overproofs are 10%? or 63%? I don't think so. What is I think it's 30 degrees underproof, 43% ABV, whatever. Somebody don't come at me, but it's in ballpark that. I've done the math. Sure. I've done the math when I haven't been drinking. Anyhow, essentially there was the British proof system. It's like underproof is more than that. Underproof is less than that. Anything proof or overproof should, theory, meet the gunpowder test. Now, the Brits were, Brits and the French, and we're a lot smarter than that. Like, this is very crude. We need a more accurate way of reliably, how strong is this stuff so we can test it. And so we like to talk about the Sykes hydrometer. In the gunpowder test was used until 1816, and until the Sykes hydrometer was invented. Well, no. There was a previous hydrometer, Clark's hydrometer, invented around 1740. It sort of became the official reference for the British government in terms of taxation. It was a hydrometer, not as good as the Sykes, but the point is that by 1740, the Brits and other countries knew how to measure alcoholic strength more accurately than does it light gunpowder on fire. Yeah. And so, it was the Clark's hydrometer for many years. We actually have a record from, as quoted in the book, a British general at, I think it was York, who was at Yorktown, was commander of like the North American forces at Yorktown, Battle of Yorktown, basically, not during the Battle of Yorktown, but to the guy, essentially like, Gabe Early, we've sent you like 1,200 cask of rum and a hydrometer to make sure that's the strength. And here's some instructions for you. So there's we have the Brits well before 1816. We have the Brits clearly know about alcoholic strength and hydrometers. Sure. They didn't send them, here's 1,200 cask and like open each one and do a little gunpowder test on it. It was right. Now, so that's the background to the fantastic document written by the Royal Navy historian in 1966, I think. But basically, his most detailed archival details going back further, and like this happened then. But he basically says in 1866, Navy issuing strength was fixed at 4.5 degrees under proof. Do the math. There's an article on my website. If you do the math, 4.5 degrees under proof in the British proof system is 54.5% ABV. Or 109 American proof. Hey, Worthy Park 109. There you go. So, point is that the Royal Navy is saying from 1866 onward, at least, it was under proof. Like, by definition, it should have failed this gunpowder test. And he's like, well, what about before then? We always want the story to be true. What about before then? But I have records. I mentioned earlier these newspaper records, like, hey, we're taking requests to sell us rum, or bids to sell us rum, and we need so much of this rum to be 5 degrees under proof. So why would the Navy like, if the Navy is buying rum at 5% or 5 degrees under proof, that's going to fail the gunpowder test too, and they can't add alcohol to it. So they could blend it with other rum. But the point is as far back as the records go, there's fairly strong evidence that the rum that the Navy was buying in many cases, and certainly after 1866, the rum that the Navy was issuing was under proof, would have failed the gunpowder test. I mean, putting aside the whole argument of like, the Navy was very good in designing their ships. Like, they knew the two biggest dangers on the ship were your munitions are going to blow up and your alcohol might catch on fire. So they had specially constructed areas of the ship, basically fortified areas of ship to contain stuff, and at opposite ends of the ship generally. So they designed, it's sort of like if you designed a ship and like to keep the gunpowder away from the alcohol and it still manages to get to it, you got bigger problems than that. So and not once, and I have spent countless hours looking for any record, any official Royal Navy record mentioning anything about, when the rum would come up from below for issue to the sailors, they would first take a sample and do the gunpowder test.
Yeah.
Might it have happened? Sure, maybe, but we know nothing. There's no written record that I can find that says like we did this type of thing. So
Yeah.
You're talking about like millions of dollars of revenue. You're talking about military budgets. You're talking about lots of money. And people underestimate technology back in those days. You just talked about how they were lighting, dunnages and storerooms with a series of lenses and prisms and mirrors. People, they could figure stuff out back then, So
it was the start of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. The gunpowder test is just such a fun thing, I think, though, for people,
That's a
right?
fun thing, but
yeah.
we want
it's
it to be true,
thing, right? I wonder when and how that ended up becoming a thing. Like, was it something to where somebody at some point had said, "Oh, cool, yeah, like they used to light this on fire"? Did it become? Was it like an old wives' tale? Like, it's hard to say.
I mean, I feel like somebody like my best guess, maybe a gin company, like oh, where did Navy strength come from? And maybe it was a gin company. It's like, hey, like it's strong. It's like, and read something about proof and proof strength, and like assumed that's what Navy strength was. The sort of like I feel like it was a misunderstanding.
There's a gunpowder gin or something, isn't there?
There was a I think it was Plymouth Navy strength gin. And it was 57%. It's like, well, all these spirits that are at 57% ABV, like, well, they're all proof strength. I mean, that's cool. Good for them. They're just not the strength that the Royal Navy stated they issued the rum at.
Right. Oh, it's wild. I mean, and so it's just that there's so many different random things that permeate misconceptions. But historically speaking, Matt, I mean, you have done the research, you've done all the things. So take us through. We'll end with the Navy rum ration up until Black Tot Day, and then let's pivot to your book. So, I know the British are blending now. They're victualling. They're doing all the things.
Vittling.
Damn it! I'll get it eventually.
Vittling, and then the system of vats, an amazing system of vats. That's 32,000 gallons to put a sailboat in.
That's a lot. That's a lot of vats.
Yes. At any given time, the Navy had 250,000 gallons of rum in vats.
Ish. And so they have a team that are sending this out to all the ships. And was it truly standardized? I mean, I'd imagine it'd be really difficult because you only had so many barrels from so many different islands. So it wasn't quite the ships that were dispatched to, let's say, the South Pacific versus the ships that were in, and around the waters of Madagascar versus the ones in the European Channel. Like, the rum's getting sent out and it's not all uniform, right? So if somebody flew from one ship to the next when they were doing their tot, it wouldn't be the exact same thing, or would it? Did the British get that good with so much rum?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. This is one of those sort of things that haunts me in my dreams. It's like, I know somewhere out there some record that tells us more detail, but
sure,
we know that there were multiple victualling yards, several in the UK, and in some cases, at least certainly in the 20th century, one in Singapore, for example, where it sort of makes sense. They're like, okay, all the ships are, going to Singapore for their kind of stuff. Like, just make the rum there too. But certainly by the 20th century, we know that there were like, we don't want Jamaican rum in this blend. Like, it's kind of expensive. It's not now what the sailors expect it to be. So it's not until the 20th century that we see them talking about specific ratios of like this much Demerara rum, this much Trinidad rum, blah, blah, blah. It's really a 20th century thing. From the 1800s, we don't see a whole lot. There's like little bits and pieces of like, this year we bought rums from here, or there, but there's not enough detail to sort of consistently say, well, in 1870, the blend was kind of like this. You can kind of infer, like, we know like how much Demerara rum came into the UK, how much Jamaican rum came in, how much whatever rum. We can ballpark some stuff, but we don't actually know exactly what the Royal Navy blend was at any level of granularity until the 20th century. But I would like to think they were trying to keep it consistent. But again, you've got different victualling yards, each sort of trying to follow the same instructions, but maybe not getting the exact same barrels of rum. It's not like, hey, Dimmer Distillers of 1840, send 14 barrels of this batch here and 12 barrels here. It was, I think it was like a best effort. And they knew what they kind of knew. We don't like this stuff. We like this stuff, but I don't know how formalized it became until much later.
Okay. Well, and I mean, that makes sense. And World War I happens, World War II happens. Mm-hmm. And then, as I've always explained it, it's as nuclear weapons start and the technology gets to a point to where
guided missiles.
Yeah, guided missiles, all these things. The Admiralty is debating this, but was it a gradual conversation of, hey, no more drinking on the job? What were those? What have you found as far as the Admiralty debating? And then what was the final tipping point towards, okay, and we're done drinking on the job. Your tot's gone. We're retiring it.
Right. So this is actually like 100-year process, at least 100-year process. We have, like the sailors like it. The officers don't like it so much.
Okay. I've been on both sides of that equation.
Yeah. Officers don't like it so much. And so, we see, sort of like sobriety movements, certainly, Britain kind of had it sort of like pushed towards prohibition, and certainly the U.S. did. Fun fact: the U.S. Navy also had a ration which ended during the middle of the Civil War. Boo!
Yeah.
Terrible
time to end it.
Right. But yeah, it was always a push, but it was always strong pushback from the Navy, the Navy itself, but also from like, oh, look, the member of Parliament who also happens to own a company that sells rum type of stuff. So, and it sort of got progressively, stronger and stronger. There are actually records of how many sailors got the little T on their card instead of rum ration, and the little T was like temperates, like basically like they would rather have the cash. So sailors had the opportunity, like your rum was part of your pay, and if you chose not to take rum, you could get an amount, a pence or pence and a half or whatever, some amount of money instead of the rum. And so we can kind of, from that data of like what percentage of the rum rations were instead paid out in cash, we can kind of see it growing and growing and growing. And certainly by the 1960s, it was a significant, I don't know, 50% or whatever. Don't quote me on that, but there was a significant number of people like, we'd rather have the money than the rum ration. And so, whoever, I forget his name, it's in the book. Basically, like, we're doing it. We're a modern naval force, and we're not doing this. Interestingly, New Zealand took till I think it was Canada. No, I think Canada ended it in 72. Don't quote me. The Canadian Navy ended in 72. And I think it was New Zealand. Like, it's in the book. New Zealand kept it around until 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another point that's interesting is they don't have rum rations, but they're not dry navies. Like the U.S. Navy is like a dry navy. Mm-hmm. I've been on Canadian ships and gotten hammered. Right. This is back in the 90s. And they still had basically a bar on board, and mm-hmm. It was after hours. You can go have drinks, and it was subsidized. We went over there, so I was on board USS Constitution in '97, and a Canadian Navy frigate pulled in opposite us. We went over there. Shots were 50 cents because it was subsidized. Terrible idea. 50-cent shots. I don't know how I got back to the ship that night, but I did. But yeah, so they do still have alcohol, but it was just the ration itself, which was
it was the daily ration, and I think there was like some beer. It's funny. I was those of you who've been in the rum industry for a while, Rocky Ye, who worked for Plantation when he passed away, sort of a legend amongst the the rum community. But he and I got into a debate over, like, he's like contending, like, all Royal Navy ships have to have a cask of rum on board. Like, okay, why today? I'm like, why? It's like, well, because the commander of the Navy or the Queen himself or Queen or King can declare like a tot will be given, the slice the main brace, tot will be given, and they have to be able to give it out. It's and so I'm like, okay. And of course, I went and found the regulation. So I found the actual current Royal Navy regulation is like, it's like, it doesn't have to be rum. It has to be, something. It's like this much of a distilled spirit at 80% or this much beer or whatever. It doesn't have to be, or like 2 cans of Coke or something like that.
Yeah.
Of soda. But it's, yeah. So yeah, I mean, ships still have some stuff on board for, whatever. An interesting thing as well is certainly, if you think about the Pussers, it was Charles Tobias, when you created the Pussers brand. He was sailing around the Caribbean that he, came up to a British Navy ship, 6 or 7 years after Black Dot Day, comes up to them, they bring him aboard, and they, like, hey, we have these, we still have these, flagons of rum or cask of rum here, have some. Mm-hmm. That's when he fell in love with it, and went back to the Navy, like, hey, can I do this? And so yeah, the Navy did not go dry. It's just, you don't get a daily ration. And in fact, the Army, the British Army also had lots of rum. There were flagons. They were at one, certainly during starting at least in World War II, the Navy victualling yards were supplying the Army with rum, but it was more discretionary. Like, okay, we're going to battle tomorrow, or we just, won the battle, here's some rum, but it was not a daily taught as part of your pay.
Got it.
That whole infrastructure, though, the vats, the flagons, and all that supporting it, was that dismantled? So post 1970 or leading up to it, getting ready for it, what happened to all that supporting infrastructure?
So they had certainly, again, because the consumption had gone down, fewer sailors, more not taking a ration. The amount of rum the victualling yards were making had decreased substantially over time. So the big one, Deptford, closed in 1962. The other ones took up the slack, but there's some in the new book, there's some stills from a video that was in 1966 that they went to the Rangerton yard, which is, I think, Portsmouth, Plymouth or Portsmouth, went to the Rangerton yard, and basically there's a 2-minute clip of the vat, the single vat they have there, and the motor they use to sort of agitate the rum, but yeah, you can, there's actually, like, they're panning past cask, if you stop it, I can see that's the Providence mark in that cask there. That says Demerara PS, that's pot still, type of stuff. But it had sort of dwindled down. The consumption was dwindled down, and so, what yards made it, sort of, number of victualling yards making it probably shrank down. The whole story of, like, Black Dot is sort of like, in the 50s and 60s, the Navy was like, okay, we got to be prepared for war. If, like, Russia attacks Germany or whatever the case may be, we got to have, like, rum in place for soldiers when they get there. And so there were, like, a lot of flagons were sort of distributed strategically around the world. And then some of these, eventually made their way back to the UK. And there's a whole long story about how many hands they went through, but eventually ended up being bought by Sukinder at the Whiskey Exchange, and that is the basis of Last Consignment.
And oh man, I tell you, the Last Consignment is such a fun bottle. That is the crown jewel of my collection, just because it really is an amalgamation of it's a direct link to the past. Which, and I know we've all seen the videos of Mitch going through and doing the flagons and everything like that. Matt, we had Ian Burrell on, and he has one of those flagons. I've seen them for sale. I don't have $50,000, so if somebody
I have an empty flagon.
You drank it all.
I know. You still smell it every now and then.
Yeah,
I know. Oh, I can still smell the essence of the Demerara. Right. But it's just a fascinating story. And so, of course, then Black Dot comes around, and anybody that has not had Black Dot, their Master Blender series are phenomenal. The 50th is great. If you get a chance to try the Last Consignment, Constantine and I are forever bonded. First time I tried it, Matt, I was with Constantine in Singapore. We were at one of the Maison du Whiskey shops, and we just said, screw it. Because I wish that liquor stores in the US were like this, to where you could say, cool, hey, that's a $1,500 bottle of rum. Can I try that before I buy it?
If there's more than one, they open it.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they'll open it, and then you get to try it, and they'll charge us. It's a really smart business model, but
because they're not American. Yeah, I've seen that. Because they're not Americans. And
I know.
We have screwed up alcohol laws.
I tell you, imagine going into like a Best Buy and saying, hey, that's a 60-inch, Samsung TV. Can I see what the picture looks like? No, you just have to buy it. And you can't return it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right. But you were talking, but funny, you mentioned that Last Consignment. This story I've noticed is like, when Mitch is out there, at an event or whatever, it's always like the last, it's closing at like 7 p.m. say, and it's like 6:55, and Mitch has got all the various bottles open, but it's always like he will pick up. Without doing anything, he'll just pick up the Last Consignment bottle, and some as like the bat signal.
Oh my God! Yeah,
me and all the other hardcore nerds would just because they know there's going to be like 3 or 4 ounces left, and damn it,
we're gonna finish it. Yeah. It's one of those things. It kind of, it's like that Family Guy episode where Who Touched the Thermostat, and all the dads pop out of nowhere, and they're like,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, right there with you. Yeah, it's such a treasure. I got to see Mitch in New York. Lovely, lovely human. If you haven't met him. Well, Matt, so we've gone through the history of Navy Rum, a very brief history in the past hour. And so tell us about your book. So you had the first edition that came out last year, I think. Yeah, you gave me, I got a copy from you last year at the San Francisco Rum Fest. So now you've done a new iteration. So just, all the research, I guess, what made you so excited to focus on Navy Rum? And then, differences between this version and the next version that's coming out, and all the details.
Okay. Yeah. So the research I did was initially a project that Alexander Gabriel came to me right after I had, quit my tech job to focus on rum. Basically, I quit it. So I can focus on rum and write minimalist tiki and modern Caribbean rum, among other things. But Alexander came to me in the midst of writing minimalist tiki. He's like, we'd like you to go research Royal Navy Rum. And I'm like, I can't. I have to write minimalist tiki. So yes, I will do this right now. I have a deadline, but I will do it. So basically between November of 2018 and March of 2019, we basically, like me and Carrie, my wife, wrote minimalist tiki and a manuscript that I gave to Alexander. And he took it and just read it. And, we talked about it. It's like, I want to make a rum based upon what you've done. Like this interesting thing with open vats and whatever, and caramel and ABV and all this kind of stuff. I want to make a rum. And, he was thinking, I'm going to make a rum and then, maybe it tails of that year, 2019. And we'll put the rum out and the book out. And it was like, we hadn't published any books yet at that point. And so like, okay, I've given them a manuscript, and nothing happened in 2019. At some point they started making this rum. They started making what became Mr. Fogg, sort of like this is what Matt wrote. We did this. We took 2 of our vats and ripped the tops off of them and explained carefully to the French excise authorities what we're doing, and figured all that out. But sort of nothing happened for a while. I was like, okay, well, 2019, 2020, 2021, COVID, and I had moved on. Like I was working in modern Caribbean rum, other projects, starting a long press. And then it was in early 2024, early last year. Like, okay, hey, guess what? We have Mr. Fogg. The rum is ready. And now we want to announce it at Tales of the Cocktail. We want to put your book out there. And there just wasn't time for us to sort of, they had been working on it. They had taken it and did some editing and laid it out, some photos. There wasn't time for sort of to like take the book project from them and do it the wonk press way. And so there wasn't time. So the book Bryan, this is the state of what it was at. It's a good book. We're proud of it. This was sort of like it's solid work. It's basically 2/3 my writing, 1/3 Alexander's writing, ballpark, but it's just solid stuff. And then Alexander's part, he talks about, Mr. Fogg and the inspiration and what specifically he did. After Tales of the Cocktails out, the rum is launched. We go on a little tour around the country. They said, Plantation comes back and says, we'd like, there's interest in this. We'd like more people to see it. We'd like you to basically want press to do like an expanded version of it and make it available to a broader audience, not just as a Mr. Fogg thing, not just as a something we sell at events or whatever. We'd like to be like generally available. It's like part of your portfolio. And we said yes. One of the conditions we said, it can't be an advertorial. It can't be like Mr. Fogg gave early. Like it's a good rum, but we can't have that be in there.
So be the Mr. Fogg book.
Yeah. And so, Alexander and Carrie, Mrs. Wonk and I, and we iterated around like, how do we make what Alexander wrote speak to a bigger topic, and how do we make it not be specific to Mr. Fogg rum, but more his sort of insights and analysis on the Navy rum and my research. Like, here's thoughts on my research, and here's how these things apply to blending. So it's not a Mr. Fogg specific book. Concurrently, I had sort of thought I had stopped working on Navy and rum research back in 2019, but no, I was fascinated, and always messaging with Mitch and other people. The interest never went away, and so over those years between 2019 and 2024, I had collected more material, more photos, and we're like, yes, we're going to take that manuscript and what the original Mr. Fogg book. We're going to have Mrs. Wonk do her wonderful work of laying it out in our style, the Wonk Press style. We're going to give it a new title. Going to have more pictures, going to have more color imagery, lots more imagery. Oh, and back in, I think it was February and March of last year, I got a comment on one of my blog posts, about Navy rum. And it's like, hello, my name is Arthur Roberts, and I read your post with interest. I once vatted the rum for the Navy in 1962. I'm like, we need to talk. So cool. I'm like, holy cow! I didn't think any of these people were still alive. How old are you? He's 85, thereabouts. But so we did a phone call, and there was subsequent phone calls. I interviewed him, recorded them, but early in the first interview, he's like, so yeah, when I vetted it, the guy, I had to learn from the guy who was leaving, and so he told me all the stuff, and I wrote them all in just handwritten notes, and I still have them. I'm like, what? but
say again?
Back. You still have these handwritten notes? Like, yeah. And I started reading them off from me. I'm like, oh my God, that's the actual complete recipe. This is not 60% Demerara, 30% Trent. Like, this is down to the gallon calculation, specific rums. Like, oh my God. And, and I, convinced him to have his son go photocopy these. And I said, this has to be, this new material, like the person who actually fatted the rum, who did the blend, not the master blender, but who followed the instructions to make the rum in 1962 with his handwritten notes and the calculation. And like, if it's this strength, like do this and this much of this cask and this much of this rum, this much Australia, this much Barbados. We have to add this. This has to be part of the book. So there's an entire new chapter devoted to this interview with him, his insights, and these handwritten notes he had. So that is for me, that's your holy grail. Like, will we ever know the actual Royal Navy rum recipe? And yes, in this case, we did have an actual thing, and it's been corroborated by other things I have seen that I've come to talking with other historians since then. I'm like, everything lines up. Everything he said matches up. Everything he said matches this video I mentioned from 1966. I showed him the video. I quizzed him on the video. This is for me, this is my crown jewel of this. And so I said, the book is more material, more photographs, and a really cool title and a really cool cover. The title, we wanted to call it, originally wanted to call it Empire Rum, but there's issues with that, colonialism, whatever. But a writer friend of mine suggested the rum never sets. That's brilliant. You're like, if you know your history, you're like, oh, that is a perfect name. And so it's the title just sings. The cover is I'm sure we'll have pictures in here somewhere in this podcast, but cover is sort of a 1810 era watercolor painting of the West India docks. It's just sort of like, it really pops now. It's sort of like I said, it's so much credit. Obviously what the one you have, we're very proud of that, but like Carrie, once she got her hands on it, like just made it really amazing. And so we're super, super proud of it. And now, 6 years after I started, I can finally be done with it.
And we see you here with the background, the rum in the background, the calendar, all that stuff. If we pan to the side, are we going to see a big board with red yarn all over it that you frantically are connecting the dots?
That would be cool, but that would be cool. But no, if you wanted to see all that, you'd have to go look in OneNote. Like I have all of this stuff I keep track. I have basically used academic research software to I basically it's Rum Google. I think I mentioned that to Bryan. It's like a Rum, my personal Rum Google of PDF documents that are all OCR'd and all keyword or full text search. So I can go like, hey Matt, do you have any references to blah 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 from 1780 to 1804? 5 seconds later, here's what I got, type of stuff. So I use I'm a technology guy. I use technology to keep track of all that stuff, so I don't have to have yarn connecting all the dots for me.
Hell yeah. Matt, that's awesome. So I guess the next question is, so second version of the book is available. Is it available now? Is it coming soon?
It should be available right around 4th of July. It's at the printer now. It's being printed. The status of it right now is being printed. And when it comes out, we will, of course, share it on social media and links and all the kind of stuff to it. But it will be at wonkpress.com.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
And so just everybody keep a sharp eye out for the second iteration of the book. And is there going to be a book tour much akin to what you had done last year, or much more low key?
So that's TBD. We're looking at what we can do here.
Sure.
And one of the interesting things we're going to do is because this is going to be, it's important to note, this is going to be our first trade paperback. So it's not a hardcover book. We wanted to do it in a way that was more affordable, a little bit more compact, so people can take it with them and read on the train or whatever. But the interesting aspect of that is that this going to this format and this printer type of printing allows us to actually print elsewhere. So we plan to print copies in Europe, for example. So basically have a European distribution, so you won't have to go order from the US and have a ship. You're talking about the super expensive shipping, So we will. It's tour or promotion is still TBD, but
for sure
we're going to make it's kind of a big noise around it. And again, it's a Wonk Press book from me and Alexandre first and foremost. It's not the Mr. Fogg book. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt, I know we've held you hostage for about an hour and a half now.
Okay, I'm here for it.
Constantine, anything else we got to cover today? I think we've kind of gone through a few 100 years of rum history. Matt's next book. What else do we got? I feel
like that we've still just kind of touched the surface on this. There's so much there.
Yeah.
So you got to get your hands on the book, everybody. This is, I feel like we've maybe done half a chapter's worth of information here, but there's absolutely so much out there on this kind of fascinating bit of history. I still think a lot about all of the technology that was involved in just doing this. You mentioned the prism thing, just the thinking about military and having done that for almost 30 years, and the logistics was
supply chain and
so
all that
complicated
stuff.
And people always forget about that. They think of the shiny, the pointing to the spear and the missiles and all that, but what goes beyond that or behind that? Is there just, I know we're at the end here, but is there a chapter or two that deals with just that part of it?
Not some. There's a chapter on the production of it, like how it's made, but there's not a whole lot specifically on supply chain type of stuff. But like like I will mention, like essentially, if you were a big ship, you would get a big cask of rum. If you're an aircraft carrier in the 1940s, you got 3,000 people on board, you got multiple casks. If you're a submarine, you're not taking a punch in down through the porthole, through the opening of the submarine. You get flagons or whatever. So that sort of logistics aspect of it, but not like military supply chains type of stuff. But it is fascinating as well. Like there's so much of what I have to go like, this is really cool, and I need to not pay attention to this because I will never get the rest of it done.
Well, see, I mean,
book
I can't
3.
imagine. The third edition.
But still, there's the whole like army rum. There's a guy who came across recently who's sort of like hardcore army rum from the hardcore army rum. We were like notes back and forth. It's like, how did you find this? Like, how did you find that type of stuff? So there's still much more out there. There's like stuff I don't know yet, or I'm still today like, oh, I did not know that. Okay,
today, Junior. Oh man,
it's like how nerdy do you want to get, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Matt, you can talk nerdy to us all day, every day. I'm just saying.
I'm happy to
talk nerdy to me.
I love it. Well, cool. I mean, Matt. As always, it's a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for your time, Constantine. I don't think we have another speaker lined up just yet. The next one will be a shorty of you and I talking about who knows what. We'll get weird.
We got a bunch in the works that we just got to schedule. So
we got a lot in the hopper. But in the meantime, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Matt, I will see you next. I will see you in a few weeks at Tales.
Yeah, in a month at Tales.
In a month-ish.
Yeah, in a month-ish. Yeah, Tales.
Yeah. Hurrah. And then in the meantime, thank you all so much for tuning in. And
Thanks,
we
everyone.
will see you next time.
Great. Cheers.
Adios.
Up spirits.
Bye.